sorry guys. So I know like some of my makeup is already started, but I decided to make this a get ready with me instead of just doing my makeup today. So I am getting ready for work, so I might as well film it. I'm going back into an older palette that I haven't used in a little while, and I really wanted to jump into my Natasha Denona Retro palette today, so that's what I'm going to be using. I just wanted to rotate some older palettes in my collection, not that this is very old. I got this last November during the VIB sale, and I just really love these tones this time of year, and this was the palette that I had the makeup artist use on me for Becca's wedding, but I kind of wanted to just jump into it again and use some of the other shades that she didn't use on me. And also, she didn't use a shimmer on me on my lid. And y'all know, I need my shimmer. I am a shimmer girl, but she really did a beautiful, like, matte look on my eyes. And then I just added, like, something to the inner corners. Because I don't know why everybody forgets about the inner corners, but I had to add a pop of shimmer to the inner corners when she was done. And then I also, like, set my under eyes with a powder when she was done as well. That's the only things I changed. Like, she did set my whole face with the Dior powder. She didn't set my under eyes, though. So she kept on using her fingers underneath my under eyes. But she really did make I really love how she did my eyes. But I wanted to give this palette a little bit more of a moment, so I just decided to use it today because I really wanted to. So I just primed my eyes with the Anastasia eye primer, and then I just used my Dewdrop lip oil as per usual, and then I just set my eyes with my Urban Decay Naked setting powder. And now I'm using the shade Nude Mauve from the Retro palette in my crease. And I just want to get that a little bit more blended out. I think this is more of the cream to powder formula. I just wanted to do kind of a cool toned mauve-y smoky eye today. Almost very similar to what she did at the wedding. She did use quite a few of the matte shades that I'm using today. I'm pretty much almost using the same ones, but I'm just popping a shimmer on my lid. So I just used Nude Mauve, and I'm going into Andy, which is a really pretty mauve-y shade. And I know I've had like my criticisms about this palette, and I think she used Go-Go on the lower lash line because it kind of looks like there's a dent in that. But I know I have my gripes about this palette, but the formula in this palette is still gorgeous. And I kind of wanted to jump into this palette today as well to talk about the new palette that she came out with, which is, you know what, that makes perfect sense because this is the Retro palette. So when this palette came out, people were like, I just thought about this connection right now. I was like, good thing I'm filming this because then I can talk about my thoughts about the new palette that she came out with, which is the Retro Glam. So it goes hand in hand. So anyway, I find that this palette is a much more cohesive color story than the color story in the Retro Glam palette. It is a pretty pink and green palette, and I love pink and green looks. But the reason why I'm not getting it is, one, because again, I have this palette already and I adore this palette. It's a beautiful formula. It was one of my favorite palettes that I got last year. It's probably my favorite Natasha Denona palette besides the gold palette, and I skipped over so many of her palettes before this one came out. I skipped over the bronze, I skipped over the glam because I just thought there was too many shimmers in that palette. This palette kind of gives me the best of both worlds because there's a lot of good warm tones in here and there's also a lot of good cool tones. So I thought that this palette was like the perfect combination of the two. Now I'm going to use that dark olivey shade called Apart on my outer corners because I really wanted to use this one. It's such a unique matte. It's like a greenish olivey toned color. So that's why I decided to get this palette over those palettes. I mean, everybody always talks about the bronze and the glam palette as being like their favorite Natasha Denona palettes, But again, I just thought that there was way too many shimmers in that palette. In both of those palettes, I mean, that I didn't end up picking up either of them, if I could speak today. So the reason why I like this palette more is, again, I feel like there is a lot more depth and dimension in this palette than the Retro Glam palette. And again, even though I have my gripes with this palette and I don't think it's as mauve-y toned as it should have been, every time I do use this palette, I love my eye looks. There are just such stunning eye looks that come out of this palette that's what makes this palette so good. And that's what makes Natasha Denona's formula like so special, is that you really get like a very blended, beautiful, sophisticated eye look out of her palettes. And that's the whole reason why people love her brand. So now I'm just going to go into the shade MOD, which is a beautiful, you know, light pinkish white, and it's a perfect shade for the brow bone. And I love this shade as well. It really brightens up the eyes. So with the new palette, I'm just going to do my glitter glue on camera so we can keep on talking about the new palette. So with the new palette, people were upset when this palette came out that it wasn't really echoing like the color story of the smaller palette that she first came out with, because the retro palette was first a 5-pan palette that she came out with, and it was a lot of people's like favorite mini palette from Natasha Denona, because honestly it's like probably the palette that has the most depth and dimension. And if y'all know, I'm really not a 5-pan palette girl. I actually had decluttered both of my 5-pan Natasha Denona palettes, and I only have 2 of the midi-size palettes from her, and I have the gold palette. So I much prefer like those sizes and the 15 pans, because they give me a lot more options and a lot of more like depth and dimension. So I was torn as to whether or not I wanted to use Jude or Swing on my lid, because this was the shade that I wanted her to use on my lid for the wedding, but she didn't. Like I said, she only used like, I think these 4 matte shades, and then I think she used like these 2 shades on the lower lash line, and then I popped glitz on my inner corners. So it was mostly a matte look, but I think I'm going to use Jude today because it's such a gorgeous, it's such a unique tone. Like, it's a beautiful, like, cool toned, taupey, sparkly shimmer. So I think I'm going to use that one today. Oh, yes, that is gorgeous. I'm so glad I used that one. It just makes me genuinely excited to use this palette today, because I've been using, like, the Not a Box of Chocolates palette from ColourPop and the Odin's Eye palette, but I just wanted to jump into something that I haven't used in a little while. I mean, yes, I did use this for the wedding, but I just really wanted to use this palette this week, and I kind of want to jump into some other palettes that I haven't used in a little while. So anyway, people were upset that this palette wasn't exactly like echoing the color story of the mini palette, of the mini retro palette. So now she just came out with the Retro Glam palette in the midi size, which is the same size as this palette, but it's a lot more of a color story that echoes the smaller palette, because it has pinks and greens and all of that. But the color story is not really something I am interested in. I'm actually much more interested in the Dream palette that she came out with. That color story is calling my name, and I'm kind of thinking about picking up that palette after my brother gives me the Sephora gift card that he always gets me for Christmas every year. And I also have built up quite a bit of Sephora rewards points with my credit card, and I have almost $40 worth of Sephora points and $40 worth of rewards, and I'm like, I might use that on getting the palette as well. So I'll get $40 off. So that's kind of a no-brainer. So, and I'm thinking about just picking up like one or two other things, but I might just get that palette. And then I think I'm going to order my shampoo and conditioner. That's probably the only things I'm going to pick up. But I might get that before because I'm kind of running low on both. But I have enough to last me, I think, another month. So, but anyway, the reason why people are kind of upset about that palette, even though they were upset about this one, is because it's not really like giving like still like what people kind of wanted, because there's not really that much depth and dimension in that palette, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But this palette is just such a unique color story to me. Like, honestly, there really wasn't anything like this on the market when it came out, and it's a stunning palette. So that's why I preferred this palette over the last one. I just don't necessarily think this should have been called the retro palette, but it is kind of like a retro color story because of like the style and the time and everything and what it's named after. But it's just not echoing like the original palette, and that's why people were a little bit upset about it. And usually she doesn't like go and release like a midi palette after she comes out with a 5-pan. Usually the 5-pan echoes the midi version that she comes out with, but with this one she kind of went in reverse. But I think she needs to release a mini version of this. I mean, I wouldn't get it, but I think that that would be stunning if she released some of like the darker olivey tones and the reds with like 2 of the shimmers. Oh, that'd be so pretty. So, and I think that would be such a cohesive 5-pan that people could use a lot more. So let me just grab my sponge and then we'll talk a little bit more. Okay, so now we're going to go in with my face makeup. So I just used the Do It face spray from Fourth Ray Beauty, my favorite. And literally it's a straight up dupe for MAC Fix Plus. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to buy that again because it's literally like a straight up dupe for the one that I love in the cucumber scent. And then the e.l.f. Hydro Grip Primer is literally a dupe for the Milk Makeup one. And I'm actually like falling in love with this one more than the Milk one. I love the Milk one, but it's like $20 more than the e.l.f. one, which is like $10. So, so for my foundation today, I was kind of inspired to use my Pat McGrath one. I was originally going to use my Anastasia one, but I don't use this foundation as often as I would like to because y'all know I love the Valentino foundation, and that's usually like my go-to if I want to use something a bit more luxury, or I'll use like the YSL one, which I also love. But this one's a really pretty one too, so I kind of wanted to use it with Natasha Denona today. Why not? So I kind of wanted to use like more luxury stuff today. You just feel like that bougie bitch sometimes. And this is a gorgeous foundation. Like, look at that. Blends out in like 2 seconds and it's gorgeous on the skin. It's just like not my most long-lasting foundation. But I kind of want to compare this to the Haus Labs one, because I've been wearing that one a ton. I wore that on Saturday and I also wore it yesterday to work and I love it. I just wanted to kind of switch it up today, but I've been loving that foundation. It's really, really good. So anyway, what I was saying about the Retro Glam palette is the reason why people are a little bit like upset about it. Not that everybody's upset about it, because there are some people that collect literally every single Natasha Denona palette. But I just, for me, it was an easy skip for me, because when you actually look at the palette, it's not really a cohesive, I mean, it is a cohesive color story. There's just like not enough like depth and dimension in the palette for me to be like, I need to add this to my collection. And there are definitely some other brands that are on my list to add to my collection. I mean, granted, I do own 3 Natasha Denona palettes. So, like, I find that that's enough for me, because she is one of my favorite formulas, but there are some formulas that are more affordable that I'd rather get over Natasha Denona. Again, it's not like her brand is bad, because obviously that's why I have 3 palettes from her. Like, if I repurchase from an eyeshadow brand that I really love, that says a lot, because y'all know I love ColourPop, and ColourPop, I don't hesitate to get the palettes I want from there because I'm always going to purchase a ColourPop palette over anything else because they're my favorite brand. But if there's a palette that really speaks to me, like I was agonizing over this palette whether or not I was going to get it, but I was like, Caitlin, you want it, get it. You only live once. Try a palette if you want to try it, and if you really, really want it, get it. And I did, and I love it. So but the thing with the retro palette, and I think I'm going to show you guys a picture of it. I just want to get my like face makeup done. So I'm using the coinciding Pat McGrath concealer, which I also kind of want to compare to my favorite concealer, which is the Tarte one, the Tarte Hydroflex one. And I also had the Makeup Artist use the YSL foundation on me, and the because I asked her like which one should I use, because I brought the YSL foundation with me, and I brought, what was the other one I brought with me? Can't remember. The Lancome. I always bring the Lancome because the Lancome's like my most long lasting one, but the YSL one lasts a really long time too. But she ended up using the YSL one and she said it was beautiful, so I was like, okay, I'm glad I went with that one. But also like, since like I really haven't been able to find like a tried and true concealer that I love besides the Tarte one, I love this one as well. Like, this one honestly was the last like luxury concealer that I fell in love with. It's a really, really good one. Like, Auntie Pat knows what she's doing. I was about to say Patty knows what she's doing. I mean, I could say that too. But she knows what she's doing when it comes to makeup. I mean, her products are absolutely stunning. But her concealer and her foundation are phenomenal, so. And I just wanted to use them with the Natasha Denona palette. So the thing is that I don't own the original retro palette because, again, this palette appealed to me way more than that one. And I'm just going to use the coinciding powder as well. So, but also, what else was I going to say about the retro palette? I don't remember. I always have to, like, you know, really think about, like, what palettes I'm gonna get. Because for someone that has a big eyeshadow collection, I mean, I have a big eyeshadow collection, but looking at, like, some of my other, YouTube friends or YouTubers in general, it's not as big as theirs. Because for me, I really think about the palettes I want to get because I'm trying to be more of like a smarter makeup buyer over the past few months than being more of like an impulsive buyer. I mean, yes, granted, I've still gotten almost 20 palettes this year. But I also like have decluttered a lot on Poshmark, and I just try to really buy the palettes that I really want to try and not just buy palettes that I want. I kind of have to think about it a little bit more. Like, for example, ColourPop, they come out with palettes all the time, and y'all know, like, there's either something that I'm going to 100% going to get, something I'm not going to get at all, or something that I'm going to be thinking about for a while. And with the most, like, recent releases that came out in October, like the Grunge palette and then the Not a Box of Chocolates palette, I really was thinking about those two palettes for a while. And then I decided to get the Not a Box of Chocolates palette because I was like, Caitlin, like, you just really want that palette over the, I think I'm going to smudge Groove on the lower lash line. I kind of want something on the lower lash line. I was just going to do liner, but I'm kind of in a smudging mood today. And then for the inner corners, I think I am going to take that shade Glitz because that's just the most beautiful inner corner highlight. Like, again, I used that for the wedding, so I kind of want to use it for today as well. That's so freaking pretty. Oh my god. And that's usually the shade that I go for. If there was any shade I would swap out in this palette, it would probably be Vivian. I don't think you really need that shade. I probably would have replaced that shade with like a more pinky shade. Like I said, I wish that this palette had like a mid-tone pinky shade. But then again, that's why she came out with the Retro Glam palette. So now they kind of like make sense. But also, I do think that this palette is a standalone palette for me. Like, I never really like reach into something else unless it's like a different inner corner highlight, because I don't always want like a pinky highlight from this palette because there are like some neutral shades in the palette that I really like using. So I'm just going to take that. I kind of got some in my eye. I don't know how I did that. But out of the reviews that I've been watching, I'm like, it's an easy skip for me. And again, I'm still like kind of eyeing the Dream palette instead because I think that palette is so pretty. And I haven't picked up a Natasha Denona palette since this palette came out, which again was last November. So it's been a year. I cannot believe how fast this year has went though. And I know I've said that like a gajillion times this year. But I really feel like I picked up this palette yesterday. Like, that's how fast this year is going. Okay, so now I'm going to take that shade Groove, like I said, and I'm going to put that on the lower lash line. Like, again, I feel like with this palette, you can create such, like, unique looks, and I feel the same about the Dream palette. I'm going to have to eye that in store and probably swatch it to see if I'm going to get it or not. Oh yeah, this is what I was going to talk about, the eyeshadow brands that I'm eyeing right now. So I am still eyeing Blend Bunny Cosmetics and Game Beauty. I've been eyeing Game Beauty for quite a while now, and I think I'm going to finally bite the bullet and get their stuff for Black Friday. I'm waiting for Black Friday for the Game Beauty and Blend Bunny Cosmetics Black Friday sales, because Game Beauty usually does 40% off for Black Friday. So I think I'm finally going to pick up the palette I've been wanting and one of the highlighters, because y'all know I'm going to have to try one of the highlighters. I mean, duh. And then from Blend Bunny, I really want to get the All Done Up palette that just came out, because I think that palette's like a perfect size for me. And I think that's finally the palette that I want to try from Blend Bunny, because the previous palettes that came out were just too big for me, because if y'all know, I'm not really a 30 pan palette kind of person, unless it's really a color story that I'm going to use and love. Like the Harry Potter palette from ColourPop has become one of my favorite palettes this year. And I actually think it's like the best quality palette that ColourPop has come out with this year. So, and I've used that palette a ton. I love that palette. It's so good to me. So now I'm just going to line my waterline really quick with the shade. I can't even remember what shade this is, but it's one of the ColourPop liners. But I really don't remember what shade this is called, so forgive me for that if this works, because this is like so dried out for some reason. That's why I did yeah, it doesn't really work as great as it used to. Of course, it works better on this side. I don't know why this side is always such an issue for me. I think I'm just going to do that. It's not really a big deal. It actually looks pretty good. So I'm just going to clean up the eyes and then we'll finish up the face because I need to go soon. Okay, so for mascara, I'm just going to use my Tower 28 one. I actually haven't used this one in a few days, so I love this mascara. I actually find myself missing using it when I don't because it's such an easy mascara to use. It's like one of the only mascaras that like doesn't clump. Oh my god, I'm so in love with my eye look. I think it looks so pretty. I'm so glad that I used this palette today. I mean, yes, there are other palettes in my fall rotation that I haven't quite gotten to yet, but I just really wanted to use this today. It genuinely makes me excited when I use this palette, and I think it's so beautiful. And this look like exactly matches like my sweater. I'm in love. I love it. So what I was saying was, so there are other brands that I want to try. So I have to be like more nitpicky about like the palettes that I would like to try. And also like as you get older, you kind of like want to think about the palettes that you're going to genuinely use. You don't want to actually like always go for like the super colorful palettes all the time. And I honestly have been super into color this year, and I've been into like using other color combos and stuff like that I've never tried before. Like during this summer, I was all about the color. I loved using color. I think I'm just going to use, I don't really have the bronzer that I wanted to use in front of me, but I think I'm just going to use the Fenty one because that one's in front of me, so I'm just going to use it. And also this is such a good like cool tone one, and I kind of want to use this more anyway, so I think I've only reached for it like once or twice this past month, so why not use it today too? So anyway, yeah, you just have to think about like more so the palettes you're going to use. Like, yes, of course, there's that palette that like comes out that's like a collab palette that you just can't say no to, like Harry Potter but I knew that again, the Harry Potter palette was such a cohesive color story to me. Like, yes, I wish there was like more unique like shimmers in there, but honestly, the formula is so damn good in it that I knew I was going to use it a lot. And then there's like other palettes that like the Rudolph palette like really surprised me, or like the Plush Like Me palette really surprised me from ColourPop. And then like I was saying about which palettes came out this year, I'm just going to use the Fetish blush from Urban Decay because I kind of wanted something a bit mauve-y, and again, this is what's in front of me, but I was looking through my blush collection last night, and I had this one still here. I was like, I can't be bothered to look anymore. I was like, I'm just going to use this. And it's such a pretty blush anyway, so I just don't know why it's not blending the way I want it to right now. I need a tiny bit more. That is a lot, Caitlin. So anyway, I just don't know why it's not blending the way I want it to right now. So with the Grudge palette coming out, or the Grunge palette from ColourPop came out like in October, and then the Not a Box of Chocolates palette came out, and I was looking at both of them, and I was like, you know, you want the Not a Box of Chocolates palette. So I ended up getting that one, and I love it. It's such a good neutral palette, and I was like, even though the Grunge palette is kind of like half neutral, half a little bit like grungy tone, it's still a really pretty palette. But honestly, I could kind of get similar vibes from the retro palette. And of course, like the neutral palette is not anything new because it's a neutral palette, but for something that I'm going to use every single day, I'm going to use the Not a Box of Chocolates palette. So, and it's a beautiful neutral palette. I'm so glad that I got it. So for my highlighter, I wanted to use this one again. And this is the ColourPop Luster Dust in the Groove Loose Powder Highlighter. Oh my god, this highlighter is so stunning, and I haven't used it in a while, but this highlighter is so gorgeous on the skin, so I kind of really wanted to use it today. And I kind of want to go a little bit more into my loose highlighters again. Oh my god. So gorgeous. Y'all know I need a little bit more. Oh, that's so pretty. I'm not like obsessed with the blush today, but that's okay because as long as you put a good highlighter on, that's all that really matters. Oh, that's so dang gorgeous. Okay, and then sorry, my dogs are just barking. They bark all the time. Like, some people just, like, race down our street, and that's what they're barking at, but, like, my brother's oblivious as to, like, what they're barking at. Okay, that is the intensity that I wanted. That is insanely beautiful. So pretty. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. I think we piled on the highlight enough, right, Caitlin? I actually don't even remember if I blew my nose before I put my foundation on. Okay, so now I just want to do my lips. So I just lined my lips with Charlotte Tilbury's Pillow Talk because honestly, I really want to use the Pillow Talk Lippy. So this is the #1 lipstick at Sephora still. And I think the other one is the Dior ones, which are also really good. Now, this is still a classic, and it's such a pretty, oh, so pretty. I don't know, I just been thinking about using this for a while. So I wanted to use it today. That is perfect. Perfect lippy for this. And I really wanted to wear earrings today, but I kind of just don't have time to put them on. Okay, that's pretty much it. Okay, you guys, so this is the finished look. So here are the eyes. So pretty. The cheeks and the lips. This is just a classic nude that literally everybody loves because, you know, Charlotte Tilbury's lipsticks are pretty amazing. I just forgot to put on my perfume before I talk, so just give me 2 seconds. And then I'll just show you a quick picture of the Retro Glam palette. If you guys haven't seen it yet, you know, we can talk about it. So let me just pull that up really quick. I just wanted to put on my perfume. Forgot to wipe off my liner. Use some water, hopefully. Okay, that should probably just, yeah, that actually worked pretty well. They're not the longest lasting liners. So let me just talk about it super duper quick. Or maybe we should just talk about it later because I don't really have time, but because I really have to pee before I leave. Tasha. Yeah, spell it completely wrong. Retro Glam. So this is what it looks like. So it is really pretty, but the reason why people are like a little bit upset is because the deepest shades in the palette are kind of like the shimmer shades, like the brown and this color. Like there's like 3 green shades that people think look too similar on the eyes. And the pinky shades, I wish that there was like 1 or 2 more pinky shades in here as well, like 1 more pink shimmer. Because, yeah, like, the neutral shades are pretty, but, like, there's just not enough depth and dimension for me. So, that's why I skipped over it. And, honestly, this eye look is kind of similar to, like, the Dream palette. But I absolutely love how this turned out. So, yeah, I have to go. So, please like and subscribe. Follow my Instagram. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. That was, like, such a word jumble. So, yeah, I love you guys. And let me know if you guys are picking up either one of those palettes. But I would highly recommend this one over the other one. I just love this palette so much, and I kind of wanted to just jump back into it and show it some love. So yeah, I love you guys. Bye.